Hey there everyone, a really quick video check-in. As we continue making our way through our course, it's Halloween, October 31st today, so happy Halloween. So let's take a look at our due dates. We've just finished up Unit 3, which introduced us to one of the most important concepts in the course, and then one now that you've seen sort of conceptually, and you were asked to apply to the sort of paragraph size. Is now something that you want to apply when you think about when it comes time to doing the more formal essays, this notion of the shape of the essay, shape of the paragraph. It's basically just a visual way of thinking about how more general statements, relatively speaking, relate to more specific statements. And so our course is, again, the focus of our course is research and composition, and so we're formulating arguments. So the idea of coordinating general and specific statements is kind of another way of talking about how do you coordinate your thesis or your argument with the support, the details that go to prove that argument. So regardless of the terminology, the component pieces really work together in the same way. And obviously we'll be crafting arguments about the literary works that we're reading, so that's how our thesis statements will work. And then the proof, or the specific statements we use, will be direct quotation from the primary text that we use, and then ultimately the research that we're doing. So Unit 3, thinking about the shape of an essay, is really just a way of thinking about how the general topic or thesis ideas, the argument level things work, relative to the support that we need to prove those arguments or to support our thesis statements. And again, it works on the paragraph level, the body paragraph level, in the same way that it does for an overall essay. And so that's really the point of what we want to think about. Our next due date is coming up on November 1st, Thursday, November 1st, looking at Unit 4, which has us looking at actually a couple of different things. The discussion board is focused on flight patterns, the story that we've read. And so it again is just a way of generating ideas that you might use as part of the essay that we'll be doing. But it also has you looking at a sample student essay based on William Faulkner's very famous short story, Rose for Emily. And while there are certain things that we're not really reading for in the essay, like maybe certain formatting things or things that are a little bit dated as far as, again, the technical formatting issues go, we really are looking for the sort of tone, style, the relatively formal voice that you're going to find. There's a fairly lengthy list here of things that I've asked you to kind of look for that are really effective, I think, in that particular essay. So especially if you're not too familiar with, how do you write an essay about a literary work? How do you craft an argument? This is the unit that sort of addresses that. It gives you a good example to look at. It talks then a little bit about thesis statements, like how do I craft an argument when it's not an issue that I can take a side on, like pro this or anti that or whatever the case might be. And certainly we're not doing objective kind of reporting or research report type things where you're just summarizing a story. So the thesis statement for us is actually quite important because it's not just a subjective opinion and it's not just a statement of fact. William Faulkner wrote Rose for Emily. That doesn't work as a thesis because who would argue that he didn't? You couldn't argue against that fact. So there's a long discussion of thesis statement here. There's a little bit about writing process, which is really just important, not because there's one official correct one that you must follow, but really that you need to be aware of what your writing process is. And if it's get assignment, write essay, that's probably not going to work for you for very much longer if it's really working for you now. So thinking about writing process here is really just a matter of getting you to be conscious of the fact that you've got a writing process, even if you're not actively thinking about it. And then the next step is really to be actively thinking about it, such that if you are one of those people, and there's lots of us like this, you seem to put in the work of doing the essay, but you never quite get the results that you'd like to, or you do get good results, but it's such a painstaking process. It's nerve-wracking. It seems to take way longer than it should. You go through this mini crisis every time it's time to write an essay. that's probably not because you're a bad person or because you're just nervous that way, but because there's a flaw in your process somewhere. So this is a really good time to be thinking about not what's the correct process, and that is the one you have to follow, but what is your process and how could you change things such that it worked more effectively. And sometimes the first step in changing process to make it more effective is really as simple as just thinking, what is my process and where is it breaking down? So if you've never thought about this before, you really go a long way to having a really solid writing process just by thinking about it for the first time in a conscious, intentional way. So it's actually fairly easy to make a lot of progress in a short amount of time as far as writing process goes. And then otherwise, we have a short review at the start of the unit looking at a number of common mistakes that people made from the paragraph before. So you would have noticed that you didn't get feedback beyond just the grade itself. The feedback is really ideally built into the course here. So what you want to do is kind of compare the paragraph that you wrote or the document you produced, whatever, with things that we've covered, and of course now the common errors here, and think of, well, did I make these mistakes? And if you did, that's sort of your feedback right there. You can figure out, I got this particular grade probably because I made these kinds of mistakes. So the feedback is sort of built into the course here. That's not to say, though, that you can't be in touch with me if you want further clarification, if there's maybe something that went wrong that you're not seeing in the common errors here. So don't think that my putting the feedback in this more generalized form precludes you from getting in contact with me and getting more kind of specific feedback. All right. So we are, as you probably found, moving fairly quickly through the course. The assignments so far have been very compact, so we haven't been doing like major essays or anything like that. But we really are putting these building blocks together that will ultimately be putting it into practice when it comes to doing the major essays for the course. So the point values aren't that make or break right now. The material is fairly transparent. There's not a lot of work on your part that you have to do, some reading, fairly short writing, that kind of stuff. But really be conscious that this is stuff you're learning that you want to then to be able to apply in the essay situation where the writing is much more substantial and of course the point values are much more substantial as well. So to kind of jump ahead, when it comes to essay time, really in a lot of ways the same thing is going to happen as with the paragraphs. You don't get a lot of feedback outside of just, did you do these things, right? And you can sort of compare, does my essay follow the models we've looked at? Does it put the concepts we've learned into practice? And if it doesn't, well, that's why your grade is what it is. It doesn't mean that you don't get feedback or can't, pursue it through me, but just be aware that I don't grade every single essay and reteach all of the concepts for every single person individually. It really is a matter of you looking at your essay and thinking, did I apply the concepts from the class? If yes, you probably did great. If not, you probably didn't do great, which is not a personality defect. It's really a matter of going back through your process, what I was just talking about. Are there steps in the process that you need to do more intentionally? Do you need to spend more time on it? Sometimes it's just a time management issue, right? So the issue of process that we're talking about now has direct application to some of the more formal and the major point value assignments that we will be doing in the class. All right. So be sure you're keeping up with things. Be in touch if you have any questions. Have a happy and safe and hopefully warm Halloween, and I will talk to you soon.